much. Got a question for Ibrahim. It's regarding the statistics of the investment in education in Sudan. You show the graph saying it's the lowest within Africa. Have you done any correlation between this figure and the result of the economy itself of Sudan? Is there any correlation? You see any correlation? That's the question.
Any other question? So, Ibrahim, if you want just a quick finish.
I think I didn't do that, but looking at other studies, in fact, there is a clear correlation between expenditure on education and the GDP per capita. So the more you are having income, the more wealthy country you are, the more you spend. Okay, but in the case of Kuwait, this is kind of but I could answer this question because maybe the lowest percentage that we talk about in terms of the GDP of Kuwait could mean a lot, in fact, compared to the whole budget of the Sudan or as a country. So it doesn't mean that the country is not putting a sizable amount on the education, but it can tell that they spend this amount. But to your question, I think there's a clear linkage between how much you spend, how much money, how much resources you have. Okay, positive. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Esther. I come from Maastricht University, where I'm doing my PhD on social protection for African migrants in Europe, in particular the Sudanese. So I'm very interested in Tasneem's presentations. It was really nice. I really liked it a lot. Your enthusiasm is also very refreshing, so thank you. But I have a question. So you talked about this land allocation for people who don't have a house. I was wondering if you could tell a bit more about that, like who can apply for that sort of thing, and is there some sort of eligibility criteria, or, you know, I would guess in my European mind of allocating this sort of benefit, if you like, right, from the government. And then you also said that, well, I think if I understood correctly, that so sometimes these pieces of land are given far away from the city, so people tend to just leave and move back and then squat or whatever. So I think, if I understood you correctly, that a better solution would be just to ask these people what they want, and maybe wherever they are living in the city, reorganize them, or, you know, build some sort of housing according to the needs of these people in the city, right? So I don't know, because like some literature is saying that like this movement from the rural to the city is actually a problem, because cities become overcrowded. So how about rather than building in the city, building decent housing outside the city and creating some, you know, cities outside the city in order to, you know, move people around. Like, it's also happening in Spain, for example, right now. People kept on moving to the cities. Now there's no jobs in the cities, so something has to be done in the rural areas. Thank you.
Regarding the first question about land allocation, in Europe, for example, the state provides a lot of, an old model since the 50s and 60s, the state provides a lot of built, ready houses. You get the key and then you move into the house, correct? And in a lot of cases, actually, in the US specifically, years after, social housing has the stigma of being ghettos and being really difficult places to live in. Why? Because they were not designed, they were modernized. They're like standard houses, like that they were optimized as the optimum way of living, and then people are just placed there into the houses. So in a lot of cases, these states ended up being demolished 40 or 50 years later because their living conditions were even worse than the way it started. So in Sudan, because we don't have these kinds of resources, another mode of housing is provided. It's called self-help housing. And theorists like John Turner have, since the 70s, have been researching that kind of housing, especially in Latin America. And what it does is that the state provides part of the housing, and then the people themselves sort of step in and they participate in their own housing. So what the state does, supposedly, is to provide site, which is the plot of land, and services, so like electricity, water, etc. And then you, according to your own means, having this security of land tenure, you, according to your ability, you gradually, sort of incrementally build your own house. And this is provided in Sudan not only for the most urban poor. We have a lot of forms of allocation depending on certain professions. For example, the doctors' professions would get allocated certain pieces of land and certain pieces of area, engineers, etc., etc., etc. And no informal kind of work, so none for tea ladies or for, I don't know, shoe shiners or something, only like certain professions, and then certain urban poor communities. So the process of applying, it's called the Iskan al-Shabi, which is popular housing, and for the urban poor, like people below the line. And there are certain selection process. So you apply, you give a certificate. She had a certificate of residence. She had a second. Sorry, I'm translating in my head. And then you, and then, sorry. And it depends on, there are certain, like a lottery that happens depending on the size of the family, depending on your country of origin, which is a big question mark for me specifically. So like how, and you have to say the state that you're from when you move to the city. So I think this answers your first question. The second question is about, this is a very big debate. Like the idea of that, let's move people out, people move into the city, it's overcrowded, it's messy, let's move people out of the city. This is, there are two levels to this. The first is that, yes, the fact that people are all moving to the city is a huge problem. Why? Because why are people moving? It means that living conditions are not good in rural areas, and rural areas need a lot of attention. I definitely agree with that. And I think the reason that I bring up Khartoum specifically is because in Sudan, it's all of the power, all of the resources, everything is concentrated in one urban center, and that's completely not fair. And it is a problem, and it needs a lot of sort of national rethinking. However, when we create the debate that, okay, let's take people out of the country, the people are coming into the city, they're making the city messy, it's overcrowded, it's being dirty, this is very exclusionary and antagonist against one kind of people, the urban poor who live in informal settlements. We don't speak about anyone else other than them. So it's perpetuating this vicious cycle of you're messing up our city, and then we're going to move you out because it's easy to move you out. You just bulldoze everything that you have, and then we take you out of the city. But the fact is the city depends on them greatly. The informal markets are huge in the economy of Sudan. Like, it looks invisible, but it's huge in the city. So, and also moving people out, it doesn't mean that you're creating new centers. You're just giving empty pieces of land, usually agricultural fields with nothing, and you just drop people there. So it's not really a solution to anything. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you very much. I actually have some questions. I will start with Dr. Ibrahim. The fact that how are we going to retain our human capital in the face of the market and the neoliberal approaches, or how we can retain these clever, skilled, brilliant people? How are we going to keep them in Sudan? I just wanted to look at poverty as part of expanding capital by allocating lands, and this land will go back to the black market, and they will make a lot of profit from it, and then we will push these people out. So are we going to end up having the whole Sudan as one capital, Khartoum? What is it? Thank you.
The answer is simple, in fact. The first question as what to do, in fact, this is not to me. In fact, it's a political question, in fact, and the person or people who can answer the question, in fact, the policymakers and the guys in the power, this is how to answer it. But as a matter of suggestions, in fact, really, yes, you try to make Sudan livable, a country that can be, and you can sustain life there, you can get a good salary, you can maintain your family and think about the future. Because as you can see that most of the new immigrants, in fact, or expatriates in the new generation, in fact, are young people, okay, just new graduates, okay? Because life is kind of shut in front of them, the door is shut. They don't have any employment, they don't have any future to look into, okay? So if you make life better, okay, be faithful, in fact, as a policy maker or the people in power that you want to make life better to the people, and eradicate and all sorts of corruption and the kind of thing, I think people will stay, because who is not thinking of going back to Sudan? Even people staying for about more than 30 years now. They think of building a house there. You think that? You believe that? This is happening in the Gulf. Still they're thinking of building a house, and still some of them are building houses. Okay? But they're building places they don't live in. Okay? So there is a strong attachment to Sudan, but life, if it's getting to be better and you feel that people are doing it faithful, there is no discrimination between people, then people will go back. They don't have to be kept, they will go back themselves. Thank you very much.
I feel very strongly about this topic, and when I'm passionate about something, I tend to talk a lot, so I'll try to be brief very shortly. Okay. I don't want to get into the whole idea of like the land market and sort of neoliberal trends of the land market, but the alternative mode that I sort of touched on briefly, it does recognize that if you are getting what you want out of your house, there's no reason for you to give in to the pressure markets and sell it out. And it's true, what you said has been happening over and over and over again, and Khartoum has been expanding because of it. So how does this model respond to that is that it doesn't look at individual land tenure. You get, this is your piece of land, individually you get it, and then it's yours, and then you sell it to whoever you want. No, it looks into the community. This is your entire community. We're going to upgrade the community according to what you think is relevant. And then in often cases, in Thailand, for example, in Cambodia, what they do is they give collective land tenure. So the whole community owns all of the land together. And then what you do is if you want to move out, it's not restricting your mobility, let's say. If you want to move out, you sell it to the collective, and then you move out, and then someone else can, if they can coming into the community. And that's sort of a way to protect these havens from the land market. Another policy way of doing that is to allocate land within the city by the government, for example, strictly for urban poor communities. So this land is protected. It cannot be developed for any other purpose. It's strictly for the urban poor who are essential for the city.
The last presenter, the young lady, our research topics are similar. Tackling poverty in Nigeria, estates in Nigeria, from that perspective. And you're trying to tackle poverty in the more narrower perspective, which is housing as a process, which is phenomenal. It's a tool of indication to poverty as well as a solution. So my proposal, would you like to, after the seminar, etc., we work on a joint paper towards a book and tackling poverty in Africa? Thank you.
That's good. I said, sure, why not?
You already give the answer. But in the before we finishing, for Professor Alok to actually handle all of the acquisition certificate. I think that's one by one I call it. If you coming first, Ibrahim, please. The last one is